P.S. Anyone who talks to you is using sign language. So yeah, but let's get on. Sunny days always seem to be the best kind of days. The sun high in the sky, a slight breeze with the wind, the smell of freshly cut grass as you walked by, and the decent temperature. It always assumed to me how some days always seemed perfect. It was a beautiful thing. Yin, get up. I need to walk. I could see the words in my mind, but I ignored them. Turning over in my bed as I tried to keep my eyes shut, but trying to do so, I felt a sudden force jump onto me, causing me to air rise in a quick motion. Panicked at what just hit me, I glanced around only to see my dog sitting there on my bed in front of me. His what? His dog was hanging out. As he sat there, staring at me, I could tell he was eager to go outside, just judging by his body language. I have to go use the restroom, he said to me, causing me to glare at him. Taking this thought, I rose from my bed and let out a yawn, looking down at him. Let me get dressed for the day first, Russell, I responded back, using my quirk. Sorry, I named the dog. Well, the person who made this named the dog. So, yeah. Sorry, you can change it though if you want to. My quirk was a blessing, honestly, with my disadvantage of hearing and my parents getting me a guide dog when I was young. It came in handy quite a lot. It was weird though, as I could really hear what he was saying. What I couldn't really hear what he was saying either, but rather could just know what he was saying. Which dogs getting annoying? Russell doesn't like to be quiet most of the time. Since he's my guide dog, he's alert and aware almost all the time. So he likes to tell me all he hears, just so I know. Walking over to my wardrobe, I grabbed out an outfit that was fit for today's weather. Unlike sunny days, I found it beautiful. Today was kind of gloomy. It wasn't raining, but it was cloudy and dark, with the sun tucked away from showing. It was autumn as well, so it was a bit colder than normal, so I made sure to dress properly for the day. Putting on my outfit, I walked out of my room, Russell following as I walked over to the bathroom. Doing my usual morning routine, I walked back out and over to my room. Can you hurry up? I'm ready. I'm ready to pee on this carpet. Russell whined in my mind, causing me to let out a sigh, shaking my head at him. Why can't you have Mom or Dad walk you? I warded back, walking over to throw on my jacket and grab my wallet along with my phone. Looking down to my dresser, I debated with myself whether or not I should bring my hearing aids. They worked for the most part and did help me a bit, but they get annoying sometimes as they feel uncomfortable for me. You're better at walks. Rolling my eyes at him, I thought it was best to bring them just in case. I decided to go anywhere for lunch or breakfast and needed them. Stuffing them into my jacket pocket, I walked over and grabbed the harness for Russell, along with the leash for it. Looking back over, I could see him sitting there, his tongue darting back into his mouth as he stood and walked over to me. As I put the harness on and hooked the leash on, I walked out of my room, shutting the lights in my room off. Double checking that I had everything, I walked down the stairs, feeling the vibrations of someone on the floor. Not minding it much, I turned to go towards the kitchen, seeing as though my parents were there. Dropping Russell's leash, I let him wander over to his food bowl, as it was restocked this morning, probably from Mom. I walked over to I walked over to the table and took a seat. Seeing my mom smile and wave to me, she turned back and said something to my dad, her face looking a bit angry. But that soon faded as she looked back at me. Her hands was a little full as she looked to be making some breakfast sandwiches. Taking it as she was busy, I glanced over to my dad, who looked stressed out and tired. He was drinking a cup of tea as he turned to me. I raised my hands up and signed to him. Stressful night of patrol? He instantly nodded and took another sip of his tea before sitting down and signing back to me. A few of us had to deal with another Nomu that thing again. He messed up a few words while signing, but I didn't care much to correct him, as I knew that he was trying to say. I nodded back to him. I'm sorry, I signed, as he just shrugged. How close was the attack this time? He seemed a little worried by my question, by the look of it. As he darted his eyes away, taking a sip of his tea, he glanced up to my mom and mentioned something to her, leaving me hanging with no answer. I frowned a little, glancing over to Russell, who now was by my side on the floor. I smiled at him as he perked his head up at me. They're arguing about your dad's hero thing, Russell commented to you. Oh, to me, sorry. And I nodded at him, turning back to see my mom and dad now arguing more. I let out a sigh and looked around the table for a piece of paper. I didn't want to stay much longer and get ignored as my parents continued to fight about the hero stuff. My mom was never really one to like the hero business, saying it was too dangerous for my dad, but my dad, being a stubborn man he is, kept his job at the agency and continued to stay a hero, claiming that he was doing fine. I didn't really have an opinion on the hero thing, though. I respected heroes, yes, and I've always wanted to be one since I was little, but as I grew older, I realized that wasn't going to happen. With my quirk not being as useful as others, and my disadvantage with my hearing, I thought it best to pursue something else. Finally, finding a piece of paper and pen, I wrote down I was going for a walk and slid the paper towards the middle of the table, letting it sit there. I stood up from my seat and bent down to grab Russell's leash before walking over to the door, pushing it open. I shivered at the cold air, stepping out into the day. I glanced around the small street, seeing as though there weren't that many people outside. I didn't blame them, though. It was pretty gloomy today, but I didn't mind. Before walking down the street, I let Russell use the bathroom in our yard, but after he was done, he began our walk down the street. Can we get ice cream? I could hear him think to me, causing me to raise an eyebrow. Do you realize it's cold outside, right? I asked him back as we made our way past the neighbor's house. I waved to one of the older ladies in our neighborhood as she stood outside, still attending to her garden, even if it was the middle of autumn. It's not that cold, but I really want a vanilla swirl from Chanella's shop. My eyes went wide as I looked behind me, watching as a few birds flew by, their thoughts blank. Russell, Camelia's shop is all the way downtown. So, he answered back, and I just shook my head, deciding that we'll get some ice cream. First, before we continue, I kind of want to explain your guys' quirk in this. So basically, you can read the thoughts of animals and talk to them through your thoughts. So kind of like, I want to say like telekinesis, because if I'm right, no, that's not part of it. But like, you can speak to animals via your mind, and they can speak to you via their mind. Does that make sense? Okay. But anyways, getting off the bus, I let Russell go first, letting him hop off before me. As we went to get off, I could see the bus driver's mouth moving, but I didn't know what he was saying. Even after about 17 years of trying to read lips, I didn't have it down. So not hearing what the bus driver said, I hopped off the bus with Russell. As I got off, my eyes looked around, seeing where I was exactly.
Lots of people are talking. There's quite a lot of cars as well. Someone just mentioned someone about heroes. Oh, I hear Russell. We talked about this. I don't need commentary. I told him off, annoyed a bit as we began to walk down the street, passing by the strangers who seemed to look at Russell with cuteness. I could tell they probably complimenting how cute he was or how he's such a good dog and all that stuff. It was typical to have those kinds of comments, as everyone seemed to love him. He was a cute dog, but clearly they didn't know how annoying he could be. Still, I love him though. As we continued our course down the street, though, I watched as a few people ran on past looking panic. Loud explosion, loud screaming. We need to run. I could hear Russell almost yelling at me, and just then I felt him bite the edge of my pants, tugging me towards where the others were running. Glancing around, though, I was shocked to find a crazed looking maniac throwing a car my way, which fear in my eyes. I pulled on Russell's leash and sprinted off to the side, dodging the flying car. Just as I dodged it, though, I could see the man come at me, eyes full of crazy and insanity. Before he could get to me, though, I felt something wrap around my waist and pulled me away. I let out a yell, not knowing how loud it was, as I pulled away towards a different side of the street. Looking around, I tried to push whatever it was off my waist, but failed to do so, as it just wrapped around me a bit tighter. Fearing for my life, I glanced over to see Russell next to me, napping at the tentacle that looked to be wrapping around him. Just as I was about to try and reach for him, though, I felt my feet touch the ground finally. Spinning around, I watched as Russell was about to attack the hooded man, who with tentacles looked to belong to. But before he could bite, I grabbed his leash and pulled him back. Russell, he's friendly, I told him, looking back at the man, who I finally recognized. He looked as though he was saying something to me, but I waved my hand in front of me, causing his mouth to stop. Taking a second, I gestured to my ears, and then said no motion, signing that I couldn't hear. He seemed to understand it after I repeated it, and looked embarrassed. He pulled down his hood with one hand while making a messy gesture with the other. I'm sorry. I could tell that he didn't know much of signing, so trying to talk to him, that would be so useless. So I reached down into my pocket, ready to pull out my hearing aids, only to realize they weren't there. Panic filled me as I looked around, fearing where they were. I looked over to where I was, seeing them sitting there on the street. But just as I was about to go get them, I watched as they were crushed. Feeling a bit of me shudder, I turned back around, seeing the shy hero was now gone. I sighed, sad that I couldn't thank him right away for saving me. Quickly deciding I needed to get out of this situation, though, I gave Russell a small tug and began to walk with him at my side, making my way down the street, not wanting ice cream anymore. I thought it was best to go home and finish the day already.
A week had gone past since the incident, and I still feel guilty for not thanking the hooded hero, who I researched to be called Sun Eater. But even so, I felt even more guilty for my hearing aids getting broken. Even if it was unavoidable, I was still scolded for not wearing them, but instead just keeping them in my pocket. Though, after being scolded by my parents, they were just happy that I made it out of the attack unharmed. Even though they were happy I was okay, they made me promise I wouldn't go into the city anymore alone. I tried to vouch that Russell was there with me, but unlike me, they just consider him to be a pet and an animal. I trusted him though, and that's why I'm back in the city. After I was able to get an appointment in quick and get a new pair of hearing aids, I decided that I needed to thank the hero for saving me.
That's why I'm out on a walk, though, through the town with Russell. I told my parents I was just going to the dollar store and then the park, but that wasn't the actual case. Instead, I'm here in the city again, searching for the hooded hero, and also getting that ice cream that Russell wanted so badly. Do you remember his smell at all? I asked him, looking around at the many people who passed by. This time around, I could slightly hear a bit more with my hearing aids in, as they picked up quite a few noises. I was surprised to get them so quickly within the short period, but I guess that's the perks of having a dad being who he is. Yes, he smells so many different foods. It's actually amazing. Here, I can smell him. This way. Just then, I was being tugged a bit down the street, Russell taking me this way and then that way until we suddenly came to a stop at a few feet away from a sushi stand. Looking around the stand, I took a notice of how the hero wasn't anywhere in sight, which made me glare down towards Russell. He looked at me, his tongue darting back into his mouth as he whined a bit. Sorry, I was hungry. I shook my head at him, turning around to face the empty street full of food stands and contenders. That's how it's spelled here, but okay. Deciding it was best to get something to eat, I walked down the street, looking at the various food stands. Taking note of what was what, there was a bunch of different foods, which made it hard to choose. As I walked down, glaring briefly over the menus, I could hear muffled voices talking, which I believed to be the vendors calling out for me to try their stuff. I just ignored them, though, the muffled sounds a bit annoying to me as I continued down. Just as I was walking around, I noticed a familiar hooded man standing next to two other heroes. Cheering slightly to myself, gave Russell a little tug as I pulled him towards the hero group. I could see a few people perk their heads over, looking in awe as the famous hero, Fat Gum, stood next to the other two. I didn't care much to chat with him, though, as I pushed myself to Sun Eater, tapping his shoulder as he jumped a bit. Turning around to see me, I could instantly notice his shy persona. So I knew it to make it quick. I bet imitation by the other two heroes as they turned around to see him stop. And, oh my god. As they turned around to see the stopped hooded hero, I smiled at him and gave a small bow and tried my best to speak up. Thank you for saving me. I tried to pronounce everything correctly, but knew it didn't sound as pretty as I tried to make it out to be. I could tell that he felt a bit more nervous as he seemed to almost shrink down into his suit. Just as I watched him start to sweat, the red-headed man next to him seemed to speak up. His voice sounded muffled, but I focused on it hard to try and make out what he was saying. Say you're welcome, Amajiki. I turned back to Sun Eater, or Amajiki, waiting for a response, but I assumed he didn't say much as he just stood there, his arms holding around him. I held a hand up a bit, shaking my head. It's okay, you don't need to say anything. I spoke up, and almost instantly I noticed him give a glance of gratitude. He seemed to relax a bit more. Yet, I could tell he was still nervous. Knowing he probably said you're welcome in his head, I accepted it and turned around, feeling a bit better about thanking him. Before I could walk away, though, I felt a hand reach out and grab a hold of my arm gently. Turning around, I saw it was the red-haired boy, who had a hold of me. He gave me a toothy smile as he looked back at Amajiki. He says you're welcome, but wants to know if you'd thank him by instead going out for coffee sometime with him. He seemed to say, as I smiled at him, looking back to the said hero who looked he was peeking at me from under his hood.
He had it pulled down a bit again, but left a little bit as he watched me look back to the redhead, sorry. Giving a wispy laugh, I nodded. Yeah. Looking to looking to my messenger bag I had it with me. This time I reached through and grabbed out a piece of paper and pen. Jotting down my number, I handed it to him, watching as he handed it back to the hooded guy. Oh my god, I can't read today. Who seemed to smile a bit at me. I glanced around the redhead and gave him a smile as I reached my hands up, signaling as I spoke, "Call me." And that's exactly what he did. Well, more like text. But that was better than calling, anyways. We talked for about a month or so before finally getting together and going out, which was a bit difficult as I wasn't really good at speaking with him, nor was he really good at speaking with me. But during our time of texting one another and talking a bit, Tamaki Amajiki had learned a bit of sign language, though he wasn't very fluent, nor did he know a lot, but he still learned it and was able to talk a bit through that. He told me he enjoyed it though, as it helped him with speaking out a bit more. He said that signing was better than having to talk out loud, so he kept on learning more and more. Like I said, he wasn't fluent in it and had some terrible sets with a few words, but he was a quick learner. He liked the fact that he didn't have to actually speak so much that he binged learning it for 5 hours the other day after school. Also, speaking of school, I've come to learn quite a bit about him in that. As I've learned, he goes to UA and is striving to be a hero, despite his social anxiety and shyness. He also is in class 3A and is a part of the Big Three in his school, and his best friend Miro, who I've met once or twice. The two were close, and I enjoyed Miro, but man, is he loud sometimes. I understand why Tamaki likes him so much. Yet, despite his positivity, when I first met him, I had to take out my hearing aids because he was so loud that it accidentally hurt my ears. But he kept on apologizing, saying that the thought that might help me hear him. From then on, he was quieter and it was super nice. I enjoyed hanging out with him the few times we did. Just as I was in thought, I saw a hand wave in front of me, causing me to snap out of my thoughts as I saw Tamaki in front of me. He stood there, a bit nervous, as he signed to me, "Are you okay?" I nodded at him, giving him a smile as I signed back. "I was just thinking of when I first met you." He seemed to smile at me, relaxing a bit as he dropped down a little onto the couch, looking towards the TV. I snugged myself into him more as I glanced to the TV, my eyes scanning over the subtitles on it. Reading them over, I couldn't help but let my eyes wander up to the boy I was cuddling, a smile painted on his lips, as I leaned in and gave him a small kiss on his cheek, leaving him to turn red. His face looked down at me as he grew about 50 shades red before he held me closer to him, not saying anything. I knew what he was trying to say, but I bet him to it as I freed my hands and signed to him, "I love you too." I hope you guys enjoyed that. I when the beginning of this, I was gonna be like, "Oh, I don't know if I have any deaf listeners," and I'm like, "Ray, you stupid." So, anyways, but I do know, kind of, not really, how hard it is for deaf people. I am best friends with one, and I have problem hearing in one of my ears, so that's great. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed, and make sure to get some sleep and water. I know school is starting up for some people. I will be having tennis at 6:30 every morning. Yay. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed. Bye, lovelies. I love you all so much.